Okay, welcome back to the slow read of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, and we've gotten now as far as book 8 and 9, the ones on friendship. We're going to treat these two books together because I think they're probably the easiest books to read in the Nicomachean Ethics, and you could probably read them without any help from me. I'll just try and draw some of the larger points which are significant to Aristotle's ethics that occur in this book. I think we should be able to get through this quite quickly. What is most interesting about this account of friendship is how influential it has been. You will recognize a lot of elements of friendship in Aristotle's discussion that form part of how we understand friendship nowadays as well. Okay, so Aristotle's first claim for friendship is that it is a virtue. It's either a virtue or it is something which implies virtue and something which is necessary for living the eudaimon life, the flourishing life, the good life for human beings qua human beings. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise. He has given us hints that this was coming right from the beginning, from book 1. He tells us in book 1 already that human beings are political animals. And remember, by that he means that we are the kinds of animals that flourish best with others, in a community, with our peers. So we need friends in order to live the good life. This is why he's going to spend 2 books on friendship. Also, he's told us that the good life is vulnerable to a variety of other things that we cannot control. And one of these external goods that we cannot control is the presence or absence of friends. They're going to be crucial to whether we are able to live the good life or not in a variety of ways, but a lot of us can't control whether we have access to good friends. It's just a matter of luck. But remember, luck permeates Aristotelian ethics. It is not something to be avoided. It is not something to be shut out. It is something that he accepts. The good life is so valuable because it is so fragile, because it is so vulnerable to luck. And friendship is one of the ways in which we become vulnerable, but it's also one of the ways in which we flourish. Okay, so friends are recipients of our beneficence. They can be helpers because they help in practical ways, like guarding our property, for example, so they're sort of useful to us. They can be a refuge in times of poverty and need, so they're there for us when we need them. They help the young and they keep them away from mistakes. There isn't a lot of this in the Nicomachean Ethics, but in other of Aristotle's works, he talks a lot about the friend as a role model for emulation, the friend as the person who inspires the young. So this is a significant part of what he understands friendship to be. Their friends also care for the elderly. And remember here, he's going to have a very wide conception of friendship. Ours is perhaps narrower, but Aristotle's conception of friendship is going to include things like familial relationships, business relationships, also perhaps something about the relationship between the state and its citizens, quite a lot, and romantic relationships, of course, yeah. And also in enabling those in their prime to carry out fine achievements. We flourish with our friends around us. They're part of that process. This is because friendship is natural to human beings. Remember, we go back to things like the function argument. What are human beings like qua human beings? We are political animals. And they are the bond which keeps communities together. So as always, he asks, what is friendship? And he starts by what people believe, or to generally believe about friendship. Some people believe that friendships are based on similarity, and some people believe that friendships are based on difference, opposites attract. Aristotle starts by asking, what can be the object of our affections? Are all our affections merely about what is good for us, for prudential reasons? Or can we have affection for the good, for the good itself? Can we love what is noble and good? He thinks that we can love what can return our affection, and he sets the stage for a reciprocal account of friendship that's still very influential today. We always understand friendship as a relationship between at least 2 people, and it has to do with how these 2 people relate to each other, and reciprocity seems to be significant. The friend recognizes our love, and when we love, we wish the best for the person that we love. So friendship is also other regarding. It has something to do with valuing that person for who they are, for their own sake. There are 3 qualities that can arouse our love, and these give rise to 3 distinctions. There are 3 types of friendship. Very straightforward to understand. The first one is based on utility, benefit. You can have all sorts of friendships because there is a mutual benefit. Perhaps there is somebody who sits next to you in lectures, who takes very good notes, and you rely on each other when either of you is not present to share notes. And you develop a friendship that's based around this. It's based around your shared interest in this particular topic. It's based around the mutual benefit of sharing notes, revising together, helping each other understand ideas and concepts that were discussed in class. Your study buddies. The same can be said of business friendships. Maybe where you work, you have somebody that you relate to really well, you work well together with them. There are mutual benefits to being friends with that person. But of course, the kinds of benefits you get from this sort of friendship can change with circumstances. As soon as the class is over, perhaps you no longer have any shared benefit and you stop being friends with that kind of person. So these friendships can be rather short-lived. If the utility disappears, the friendship disappears. Then there are friendships based on pleasure, things that you have in common that give you pleasure. You might have, as I do, horsey friends. Horsey friends are other people who are crazy about horses. You get together, you talk about horses, you do horsey things. It's all in the shared pleasure of that shared activity. Of course, if either of us didn't like horses anymore, then we wouldn't meet and talk, because the whole thing was based on the shared pleasure of the shared activity. So again, like utility pleasures, these kinds of friendships can be short-lived and they go away when the utility or the pleasure has ended. A different kind of friendship is perfect friendship. Perfect friendship is based on a shared understanding of the good. This is a deeper friendship because you understand who the person is, you know the friend really well, and you appreciate them for who they are. You wish their good for their own benefit. So there isn't the idea that the two of you are seeking pleasure together. Rather, the two of you are seeking each other out because of who you are and because you value and recognize who that person is. This kind of friendship, of course, has a pleasant dimension to it, but it's not based on that pleasure. It's actually based on a shared love of the good. And this kind of friendship is very rare because the kinds of people you can have this friendship with are very few, difficult to find. It's also a difficult friendship to cultivate. It takes time, it requires intimacy. It's the only one that involves actual trust, because you trust the person because of who they are. That means this kind of friendship, though, at the same time, is longer, more reliable, the kind of thing that can be lifelong and wouldn't end when the superficial element in it, the pleasure or the utility, ends. Now, anybody, good or bad of course, can have a utility or a pleasure friendship, but only the virtuous can have the perfect friendships because they're based on a mutual appreciation of the good in the other person. Friendship, like all the virtues, is a disposition. It's a disposition of qualities, a trait of character that persists over time. You expect your friend to be reliably your friend. Even if there isn't any contact between the two, the friendship persists, although if you go to extremes and there's prolonged and absolute absence with no contact at all, maybe even perfect friendships would wane. The disagreeable find it difficult to make friends because they are disagreeable, but perfect friends love each other for who they are and for themselves. Affection can be felt for anything, but of course friendship is a choice. Especially perfect friendship is a choice because it involves a choice to love the good and to wish well for the person because of who they are. It is of course not possible to have many perfect friends because this kind of friendship takes time and investment. When you care for the other person, it's not possible to do it with many different people. The people who have a generally friendly disposition, the extroverts, the charming people, will find it easier to have pleasant friendships. The business-minded will perhaps find it easier to have utility friendships. And friendships are based on equality. They're based on the idea that both friends get a benefit from what is involved. Of course, the type of benefit you get doesn't have to be the same as what you give. It could be two different things. And in this respect, friendships can also be unequal, and they can work between people of unequal status. So a father and a son don't have the equal status, and they don't give each other the same benefit, but it's still possible for them to have a friendship. The same between a husband and a wife, a boss and a subordinate. So there are different kinds of affection and different kinds of benefits. But for Aristotle, no friendship is possible between those who have a great difference in status. Somebody who is very honorable with somebody who isn't, for example. For Aristotle, friendship is more about giving affection rather than about receiving. And affection can equalize unequal friendships. So friendships between unequal people can be made equal when affection is offered. Vicious people, of course, can only have temporary friendships and enjoy each other's viciousness. That's because of the nature of vice. Friends share all their goods in common. There's the idea that what benefits me is available to benefit you. And the greater the friendship, the more it demands in terms of justice. So I think this is the idea that your friend has a hold on you. Sounds negative. It's not that. But that your friend stands in a particular position to you and can demand more of you than other people who are not in that position. But rightly so. It is just that your friend demands more of your time and effort, attention, affection. In the same way that friends come together to secure some advantage, communities come together. So the idea of friendship can work at the community level, in a group between a lot of people. This would also be a friendship for Aristotle. That's why he then goes on to talk about different political constitutions, because political constitutions are ways that rule and govern how communities come together. So how communal friendships are managed. That's why he has this discussion here, which might be a bit surprising for us, because we tend to think of friendship as something that happens between 2, 3, 4 small groups of people, not entire communities. Now, he has a variety of different political constitutions. Monarchy is the best, but of course here he thinks about monarchy run by a person who is in fact worthy of being a monarch. Aristocracy and timocracy. Timocracy is a type of moderate democracy where the lower class is disenfranchised. So it's not absolutely everybody has a right, but only some. So monarchy is the best, aristocracy is in the middle, and timocracy is the worst. This is because he has a conception of some people as being better than others. Therefore, it doesn't make sense to say that almost everybody should have a say in how the community is run, because these people are fundamentally not equal in Aristotle's conception. Tyranny is a perversion of monarchy. So monarchy must always be benevolent. Remember, the monarch's motivation is the good of the community and how to help everyone flourish. It's not self-centered. When it becomes self-centered, that's when you have tyranny. Aristocracy is corrupted into timocracy. So he kind of sees aristocracy as a gateway into more and more people involved in making decisions, and that's not a good thing. And timocracy is completely perverted into democracy. That's because in democracy he sees absolutely everybody having a say, regardless of whether they have the status or the ability to have a say. Okay? This is not an egalitarian account at all, because he assumes that we are not all equal. He sees the same kind of reflection of different types of constitution in the household. So the father being in charge of everything is a monarchy. This is the person who ought to be making the decision, in charge of making all the decisions. Tyranny is where the son is in charge, perhaps, of everything. A husband and a wife is aristocracy. They both have a say, but in different parts of the household. And too much control, that can become an oligarchy. The wife should have control over the right parts of the household. He doesn't discuss the virtues of women in the Nicomachean Ethics at all, but in other places he suggests that women are capable of a limited virtue because of their nature. So they're capable of household management and caring type virtues, rather than the full virtues that Athenian men were capable of. Brothers together have a friendship which is akin to democracy, so many and equal have a say and have an equal say, but if there's a weak head of the household, this leads to the chaos of democracy. Everybody tries to have a say. But all these kinds of things involve, all these kinds of relationships involve a type of friendship between the ruler and the ruled. So the role of the father and the father-son friendship is always to give affection. The husband, for example, receives the greatest affection because he's superior. Here is an example of an unequal friendship that's made equal through the giving of affection. The wife gives more affection than she receives because she's in a lower position and she needs to equalize the whole thing. And brothers have equal affection for each other because it's like a social club. Now, of course, you see very clearly that he has a much wider conception of friendship than we do. That includes familial friendship. So he talks about the love that parents have for their children, and he sees the children as part of their parents. This is a very overwhelming and special kind of love. Brothers love each other because they have the same origin. They were in the same family, they grew up together, they have the same points of reference. And children love their parents for being good, for having been good parents and helping them flourish. You can see here all these ideas are part of how we understand familial friendships or familial relationship ourselves. Husband and wife is a natural pairing. They come together to cohabit, to secure the flourishing of the household and the lives of everybody within the household, and they have divided functions about what each one does to help the household flourish, but the children is what brings them together. Okay, problems in friendship. Complaints in friendship arise more often in utility friendships, and this is because the friends seek to derive a benefit and there could be disagreements about whether the benefit was worth it or not. In perfect friendship, there's nothing to complain about. In pleasure friendships, you don't get that many complaints because both get what they want. Utilitarian friendships can have a moral or a legal basis. Here he understands the utilitarian friendships as also being part of what the state becomes involved in, because he considers them as kind of business arrangement and business agreements as well, much wider than how we understand friendship. But if these kinds of business friendships involve utility in the form of services, for example, which need to be repaid, you can see how disputes could become a matter for the state to deal with. And the state would have to decide what happens when a benefit has not been received. Disputes in friendships happen as well with superiors, and the correct solution here for Aristotle is for the superior to get more honor and the needy friend to get more gain. So two different things are exchanged in this friendship, but to different degrees. The inferior has to offer more honor to make up for the inequality in status in the friendship. Okay. That was Book 8. Book 9 continues the discussion of friendship, so we'll keep going and get to the end. More thoughts on friendship. Unequal emotional investment can lead to the end of the friendship. If somebody feels that they're giving more than they're taking, that will be a reason to stop the friendship, and that's the kind of thing that can happen in utility and pleasure friendships, but unlikely to happen in perfect friendships, because there the two people have the same amount of emotional investment. That's why the perfect friendships persist over time. Any breach of contract in a friendship causes problems, and here is where the state may become involved, because the recipient is the one who should decide the value of what it is that he gets. And if there is disagreement because the value hasn't been fixed in advance, very contractual language here, the state may become involved in order to resolve the dispute. It is also possible to give the kind of gift that it is too great to ever be repaid. He has some thoughts on gratitude on other parts of the Nicomachean Ethics, where he suggests, if you remember, that a possible solution to receiving a gift that is too great to be repaid, or one that cannot be repaid to the benefactor, is to pass that on and become the giver of gratitude to somebody else, the giver of a benefit to the community or to somebody else who is in need. In difficult cases to decide, in difficult cases of dispute, it's impossible to decide in advance of knowing the particulars. Again, the claim that decisions are not based on concrete principles or narrow rules, but they have to change depending on the particulars of the situation. But he does give us some general guidelines that might be helpful. Repay benefits before gifting friends. So be more aware of what you owe before giving a benefit to somebody else. You have to repay all your obligations before you think of giving to others. Unless the gift is the most urgent duty in terms of honor, always repay honor first. Honor and aid is due to one's parents always, because they have brought you up well, so they have already given to you. Respect is due to elders because they have experience of life. Remember, you can't almost even be a philosopher unless you're 50 years old, according to Aristotle. And the only way you're going to cultivate virtue is if you practice virtue. So it's the elders who are most likely to be virtuous. And sharing is required between comrades. This is the communal aspect of flourishing. When and how do we dissolve friendships? Well, things are always complicated when one person thinks that he was a friend because of his character. One person thinks he was in a perfect friendship, a friendship where he's valued for himself, but the other person thought he was in a utility or a pleasure friendship. This can come from a misunderstanding or from an outright deceit. A vicious person presumably might want to deceive. Or A can accept B as a friend, thinking that they are virtuous, but discover that they are indeed vicious. And in that case, they may have an obligation to try to help, unless B's choices are absolutely incurable. Another reason for ending a friendship is when one friend grows in virtue, but the other friend hasn't followed along. So it's impossible for the friendship to continue, although some residual feelings of affection may remain in that kind of case. Our feelings towards our friends reflect our feelings towards ourselves. This is the case in perfect friendship, yeah. So the way we feel about the other person reflects how we feel about ourselves, because what we share is our conception of the good. So we wish for the good of the other person for the sake of that other person. This is a very important conception in understanding friendship as something that is truly other regarding. We don't engage in perfect friendships for ourselves, for our own benefits, in order to exploit the person or take advantage of them. We have to be invested in the well-being of the other person for their own sake. That means we also wish for the existence and the perseverance of the friendship for the sake of the friendship. We enjoy spending time together, we tend to choose the same kinds of things, and we share in the friends' joys and sorrows. Self-love is possible because we can feel that way towards ourselves, and bad people don't have any of these qualities. They choose harmful things, they shrink from what is best for them, they can even commit suicide. So here's a small indication that Aristotle thinks that suicide is giving up on yourself, and something that only bad people would do because they don't love themselves. Bad people have no lovable qualities. Goodwill cannot be felt towards people you don't know. It can be a sudden feeling of feeling positive towards other people, but friendship requires knowing others to really grow. Now he has another couple of terms. He has concord. This is the feeling of agreement or harmony with another person. This is a person who you agree about what you find interesting, where you adopt the same kind of policies towards some ends, and you do that together. This is harmony that you find in a group setting where friends come together as citizens of the state. Here they have a shared conception of civic responsibility, and then they work together towards the state flourishing. Bad men cannot have this because they always work against each other because of their nature, which is vicious. Now, why are benefactors more loving than beneficiaries? Is it because they wish to get paid back? Should you be a benefactor because you wish to get it back onto yourself? No. This is in the nature of beneficence. Beneficence must always be expressed with the other person in mind. It's not something you do for self-interest, to gain something for yourself. It's something you do because the other person needs it. This is exactly how we understand beneficence or kindness as well. It involves affection for the other person and not searching to gain for ourselves. Should you love yourself more than others? Now, we wish well for ourselves for our own sake. That is true. So in a sense, we are our own selves' best friend. And to act virtuously is to assign to yourself the most honorable task. This is to see yourself in the best possible light and to obey reason, the most authoritative part of yourself. To be self-loving leads to benefiting yourself from doing fine acts and helping others. This is a really important point. The Eudaimon life, the life of virtue, is a life led according to the dictates of reason. It is a practical life that involves action, and this action is often other regarding. Kindness is about doing something that benefits the other person who is in need. But at the same time, the choice to do the kind thing is an act of friendship towards yourself. It is an act of doing what is in your own best interests. Remember, all this is tied up to Aristotle's conception of human nature and the function argument, the idea that we flourish when we follow the dictates of reason. So we don't behave morally because we gain some benefit. Rather, when we behave morally, when we act virtuously, we do what is in our nature, and inevitably that is a good thing for us. That is how we flourish. The two are intertwined, and he makes this point again with respect to flourishing. Okay, is friendship necessary for happiness then? The self-sufficient do not need for anything else, but friendship provides something that the friend cannot provide for herself. Man is a social creature. He needs the interaction with others, and he wouldn't choose to have all the goods of a flourishing life all by himself. It is possible that we don't need pleasure and utility friendships, but we do need perfect friendships because they allow us to contemplate what is honorable and to enjoy living. In recognizing the good in perfect friends, we get an enjoyment which is part of living well and flourishing ourselves. This is what life is for, and presumably it's the kind of thing that gives life meaning. By nature, we are social, therefore friendship is both good and pleasant for us. And what makes life pleasurable is the consciousness of our own goodness, which is also reflected in the friend. This is one complicated picture between flourishing, morality, friendship, reason, and happiness. How many friends should you have? Well, you can't have too many utility and pleasure friendships. They're very easy to have. They're quite contained because they're about a specific thing, so you can have loads. You can have a horsey friend that you talk about horses with, and you can have a doggy friend that you go walking with your dogs, and you can have a philosophy friend that you meet at conferences every couple of years. You can have as many of those friendships as you want. For perfect friendships, there is a practical limit because simply you can't be intimate with that many people at the same time. Do we need friends more in good or bad fortune? Well, those in misfortune need friends because they need help. But those who are fortunate also need companionship. The fortunate life cannot be complete without the support from other people. And also, in fortunate times, you need someone to be the recipient of your benevolence. You saw how many of the virtues that he discussed in earlier chapters in book 3, for example, were about other people. You have magnificence, giving all this money. If there were no other people around, who would you give this money to? So it's more useful to have friends in misfortune, but it is more honorable to have friends in fortune, because the fortunate circumstances allow you to express yourself better as a virtuous being through friendship. Of course, the sight of the friend in pain pains us ourselves. So women and weak men apparently want to express their troubles all the time, which makes their friendships full of hurt and pain and substandard than other friendships. You can see that toxic masculinity was alive and well from the times of ancient Greece. According to Aristotle, manly, perfect friendships should keep their hurt to themselves and not share it with their friends, because you don't want to be hurting other people as well. And you should only ask a friend for a service when they can actually give it to you with little or no cost. So you shouldn't impose on your friends either. Friendship, therefore, is a kind of partnership. There is great pleasure involved in all the friendships, and enjoyment in spending time together and sharing perhaps their occupation. One of the occupations that is most enjoyable to share, of course, is philosophy, the pursuit of philosophy, the exercise of reason, discussion, debate, finding out new ideas, being challenged. All these things are part of Aristotle's conception of philosophy, the grounds of which were set by Plato and Socrates. All these things now become an exercise in friendship, the sharing, the common pursuit. That means that the goodness of good friends increases in virtue of their association with other good friends in a variety of many different ways, one of which is the discussion of philosophy. Okay, we'll stop there, and next time we'll do the last book, book 10.